Today, we're going to give you a quick overview of the best and most OP abusable champions to play in every single role so far this preseason. Win rates are kinda all over the place right now because everybody is trying all sorts of completely random builds and items out. So hopefully we can shed some light on what is actually good to play right now. But before we get into that, if you want to see the new best builds, the best runes and everything else for all of these crazy picks in this mental preseason, then click the link and download our brand new and improved free desktop app. You are seriously missing out if you're not using it already, as we have so much great content for you guys with our huge new update. We're going to start off in easily the most dominant role in the game at the moment, which is the new jungle. You can basically pick anything that you want in the jungle and pop off now, because it's just so forgiving, and we expect and hope for some changes to this very soon. Just to give you an idea, the first champion we're going to talk about in the jungle is Ezreal. Yes, Ezreal. AD carry junglers are a bit broken right now, mainly Ezreal and Kai'Sa. So marksmen aren't really supposed to jungle, with the exception of Kindred of course, so when they can, they're a bit too strong. They get consistent experience, decent gold, and as long as they have the tools to gank often, they can snowball so quickly. And before you know it, you're against a 3-item AD carry before the lane phase is even over. Ezreal's setup is pretty similar to before. You can go for an Iceborne Gauntlet, you can get the new Ravenous Hydra, and then the typical Ezreal items like Muramana and Serylda's Grudge. The point here isn't even the new items though, mainly just the jungle changes with the new pets and how you can pretty much jungle any champion now, as the camps just don't really deal any damage. The new Hydra on Ezreal is a bit strong though. You stack it up pretty quickly when farming the jungle, and then you go into lanes with those bonus stats you get from stacking it out at 40, and you just deal so much damage and cleave too. Also in the jungle, we've seen some somewhat surprising winners coming out of this patch: Jax, Wukong and Trundle. Jax is probably the biggest one though. This champion feels a bit absurd at the moment, as with Spear of Shojin your basic abilities become, well, spammable. Once you got a few items and a bit of armor, you face tank everyone, you constantly queue into them and block all damage that comes your way too with that counter strike. Spear of Shojin has always been a terrifying item when it joins the selection on the Rift, and every time it does, it just makes Jax a bit bonkers. Well, this time round many people thought it would be different, but I'm afraid to say that Shojin Jax is back with a vengeance, and honestly it's just completely, absolutely abusable at the moment. Wukong jungle setup on the other hand is more focused on the new Ravenous Hydra. You can pretty much rush this item and get it stacked up and it instantly feel its power. Then you just go for those typical items like Sundera or Triforce, Death Dance and other general bruiser items. The clear times, the burst damage, the survivability and everything else that you get from this new jungle Wukong setup is mad. So if you haven't tried it yet, give it a go. To finish off in the jungle, champions who were already dominating the jungle are now even stronger. Echo, Hecarim, Elise and Evelynn are to name a few of the picks you can completely destroy the Summoner's Rift with right now. Echo's win rate is one of the highest in the game in the jungle at the moment since this patch dropped. He was already doing really well, but now with the less punishing jungle not taking any damage from camps and his previous strength still shining, he is absolutely thriving. One of the other reasons why Echo is OP at the moment is because no one's trying out loads of random items on it. We know what works best on this champion and people are sticking to that which is already tried and tested. Rocket Belt, Lichbane, Zhonya's for one big bursty boy. The Nightmare Horse Hecarim on the other hand still has a ton of different builds being played around with, but the majority of which are still showing great results. You've got Full Glass Cannon Lethality, Muramana Sundera, you've got Triforce Bruiser, Black Cleaver Tank, but all variations are still popping off. Hecarim is still a super snowball focused champion though. If you get really fed in the opening few minutes, the game will be unlosable. But if you don't really do too much and you just coast through the early game, you're probably not going to be that impactful. Helicopter Hecarim is still pretty damn scary though, so be careful. Moving up to the top lane now, which is most likely the other strongest role in the game again, mainly due to how completely absurd bruisers are at the moment, and Ravenous Hydra is somewhat responsible. Fiora, Jax, Riven, Wukong and Camille are definitely some of the strongest champions that are riding this wave to the max. There are many reasons for this, some because of true damage like Fiora's Vitals and Camille's Q tearing through all those tanky top laners. Also because of Spear of Shojin making your champion feel like you're playing on Earth, especially on Jax as we've already mentioned. And then of course you've got the new Hydra, which is just way too powerful. Fiora is one of the scariest champions in the entire game at the moment, and she's probably now as blind pickable as she's ever been and probably ever will be. First and foremost, so many people are spamming tanks, learning those new items, and the majority of these lanes, Fiora just shreds them down with her true damage. Secondly, Fiora is benefiting hugely from the new Ravenous Hydra, as this item is too strong and is really good on her specifically. You can stack it up super quickly and then deal huge damage, have a ton of healing and spike so much earlier than you should do. Fiora's ability to carry is blatant, and how she carries is also unquestionable and can be a bit overwhelming. Get fed in the lane matchup, snowball from that, become ungankable, side lane, take all their towers, and 1v5 if anyone tries to come and stop you. As we've just spoken about, loads of people are spamming tanks and trying out all those new mythic items. So champions that completely destroy tanks like Darius, Olaf and Garen are just stomping them every single time. These 3 picks have just been dominating over the last few months, and with these changes they're only getting better and better. Darius doesn't just delete those tanks with his true damage on his ultimate. He deals fantastic bleed damage, he outsustains them, and honestly often just has more impact in games and teamfights and side lanes than them too. Obviously if you're playing Darius and you just farm up in the lane phase and play really passive, tanks are going to have a better time when it comes to teamfights. But the point is, you should easily be able to completely stomp them to the point of no return. Darius snowballs at a ridiculous pace, and what can your enemy carries do when you have 3 levels up on them, flash and ghost available, and you swoop in and one-shot them every single time? Shen is still probably king of the tanks currently, and Cassante is still creeping up into those top tiers too. And in the right games and the right matchups, these champions are winning a respectable amount of games. But in lanes against true damage tanky shredding AD bruisers, they just can't keep up. Moving down to the mid lane, and this role has actually not changed too much. Everybody is spamming those Rod of Ages champions, but the item in general isn't actually performing as well as expected. And to be honest, it's just because this item does take time to kick in. Now once it's fully stacked, it's definitely a lot stronger, but that time taken to get the item and then wait for it to stack, loads can happen. And if you don't make too many moves during this window, the game might already decided before you get there. So the real mid lane winners this patch are the ones that were already doing really well. Syndra, Vex and Anivia were already having a great time, and now they're doing even better. Ever since her update, Syndra has just been a fantastic choice, and her win rate is still impressive as we go into the preseason. Syndra may have a relatively weak early game now, and her previous early to mid game domination is nowhere to be seen, although now she scales and spikes into the mid to late game like nothing you've ever seen before. Her damage is one thing, but that stun width is crazy, and her ultimate execute is genuinely madness. When she's got that death cap now with her passive fully stacked up, yeah, that's a lot of ability power. Vex is also still doing really well at the moment, and her stats are above average and have been for quite some time. The preseason carnage is well and truly here, but Vex is just kind of chilling out and enjoying every minute of it, and still winning a lot of games too. She has an amazing ability to solo carry games, she's got reliable CC, fantastic poke, really good burst, and those ultimate resets are also so satisfying when they come in clutch at the right moments. Whether you pick Vex to destroy certain matchups like Yasuo or just to abandon lane and spam your ultimate around the map, she's still a really good choice to go for in this preseason. Bruisers have flooded the top lane so much that they're also leaking into the mid lane now. Garen, Pantheon and even Aatrox are being played a lot in the mid lane and seeing really good results too. But this also means that melee punishing counter picks like Rumble are instantly more viable too. Yes, you heard me correctly, Garen mid is now a thing. I mean, it's pretty weird, but it's pre-season so anything goes, and we all know just how oppressive Garen can be in the right lanes. Well, despite it being more popular, it's still not something you can actually blind pick too confidently. But if you do get the right matchup, it can feel a bit busted. Now, whether you build like a full glass cannon or a bit bulkier, Garen is probably one of the most forgiving bruisers to play. He's really easy to pick up, he deals a huge amount of burst, and he's always got that sustained passive to fall back on. Now, because people are playing things like Garen mid, this means Rumble is back again. Rumble is the ultimate Uno reverse card to pull out in that mid lane, and you can stomp those low range lanes so easily with this champion. If they come into range, you melt them down with your flamethrower without any chance of retaliation. And if you do get a few kills and get a bit fed on this champion, you can walk around the map and delete entire teams with just your ultimate. Rumble might not be as popular as he once was, but he'll always be viable in the right lanes against the right champions. So if you're already fed up of all these random bruisers in the mid lane, try him out. Ryze is just another one we wanted to briefly talk about too. Now, since the changes, he's nowhere near broken, but he does feel somewhat stronger. I've played against quite a few Ryzes since this patch dropped, and he definitely doesn't feel as easy to beat as he did before. The new Rod of Ages helps him scale up better, and once he's got Seraphs and Deathcap and a Void Staff, he seriously packs a punch. Now, I'm definitely not telling you to play Ryze every game, but if you do come across one, it might be time to respect him a bit more than you did previously. Let's move down to the bot lane now, and it's time to take a look at those AD carries. This role is another one that hasn't changed too drastically. The consistent, versatile, recently dominant marksmen are still the best picks to go for. Champions like Kai'Sa, Twitch and Jhin, who can be played into so many different drafts, are still performing the best of the bunch. Talking of the best in the bot lane right now, we have to talk about Kai'Sa mainly because of her sheer versatility. She works really well with loads of different matchups, whether it's peeling enchanters or crowd controlling tanks. There's always a synergy to be found somewhere. Kai'Sa also fares well in the majority of lanes too. There's not too many ones that you're going to auto lose as long as you aren't against a 2 million mastery points Draven. But let's be real, not many of those exist because most Draven mains have about 34 permaband accounts. Kai'Sa has self-peel and mobility with her ultimate, she has wave clear, she has insane burst damage with her QW and her passive proc, and it's that same passive that allows her to burn through tanks no problem. There is a lot to like about Kai'Sa right now, which is why she's still in such a good spot. We've covered the most versatile, and now it's probably time for the most consistent. Jhin. Jhin is a fairly unique AD carry really, but he's kind of always been viable ever since his release, and especially so in the last few seasons. Similar to Kai'Sa, he can be picked alongside pretty much anything, and you're always going to be somewhat useful if you don't fall too far behind. You've got long range pick potential, incredible burst damage with your Q, Gale Force on 4th shot, you can set up ganks, you can tear through tanks, and now it sounds like I'm writing a song somehow. Anyway, Jhin has no real weakness in any part of his game. His laning is solid, he can be a real bully here, or he can just teal back and farm. His mid game can also be exceptional if he's ahead, and in the late game he scales just fine, bringing a ton of execute burst damage to the table. Playing a 6-item Jhin is one of the most fun experiences in the game, so don't miss out and give it a go. There's some other strong niche picks in the bot lane too, like Nilah, Seraphine and Karthus, who are seeing some pretty impressive win rates so far already in preseason. Nilah is probably the most situational AD carry in the game though, and one of the most misunderstood and underused champions too. But if you do pick her in the right games, she's honestly a bit broken. Her win rate is fantastic, she has so many tools to think about when playing against her, and she actually offers so much in such a simple design. More experience than your enemies, tons of sustain and shields, a lot of burst damage, and a pretty crazy ultimate too. So if you haven't tried her yet, why not? Tank destroying hyper carries like Vayne and Kog'Maw are still very situational too, however they are definitely now a lot stronger in the right draft than before. For example, if you go up against a composition with full tanks like Sion and K'Sante, you're going to struggle to kill them unless you pick one of these guys. Finally, support hasn't changed too much either, but one important thing is that you're adjusting around the rest of the map's changes. Bruisers are seemingly the ones completely in the lead at the moment, which means if you're a support main and you're going to play around them, this is going to be your route to winning more games. Nami and Janna are still two of the best supports in the game, and they just do so much for this crazy meta. They are really consistent, they work into any team comp, they have tons of utility, and they also have everything that you need to make those bruisers on your team even harder to take down. Janna is still probably one of the strongest champions in the whole game, and has been for months and months now. She just does everything that you want from a support, and does it so well that she just can't stop winning. She's had one of the most impressive win rates in the game, hovering around 53 to 54% ever since her updates and changes, and with still no nerfs coming her way, this is not going to change anytime soon. Janna is such a fantastic pick alongside basically any AD carry you want to play. She offers so much peel and protection, but also boosts their damage and movement too. So it's quite obvious to see why she's just so good. Nami on the other hand is a bit different. She contributes less reliable protection but offers a huge amount more burst damage with just one click. Her E ability alone is what makes her infinitely stronger and one of the many reasons why Lucian Nami is just so broken. Lucian's passive means whenever he's healed, shielded or buffed by an allied champion, he does more damage. So when you combine that with the fact that Nami's E buffs him and deals so much damage too, you can understand pretty quickly why this lane is still S tier. Lucian is nowhere near as viable without Nami, but she works well on her own with tons of other lanes too. If you haven't tried those cheesy burst lanes like Nami brand, here's me telling you to try it because it is so much fun. There are some other enabling supports that are performing really well too at the moment, like Zilean and Taric. Both of these champions are a lot less played and popular than the previous ones, but their win rates are still equally as impressive. Zilean is that one champion that nobody wants to come up against. The bombs are enough to drive you completely mad, but then you add in his E which slows you down like the speed of Rel with no horse or legs. And then you also add in his ultimate. Zilean's kit is one of those designs that is just so effective for very little risk. As long as you can press his R on the right targets at the right time, this can honestly make the difference alone. Taric on the other hand is far more durable and a bit more consistent, but his ultimate is equally if not more game changing than Zilean's. If you time it right in teamfights, you can negate an entire team's wombo combo burst damage, which can really make the difference on its own. Aside from that, you've got consistent heals, good resistances, and of course those stunts too. And if you haven't given Taric another look this preseason, now it's time to change that. Especially if you want some pretty free MMR going into the new Season 13. Some other surprising support picks still popping off are underrated picks like Rel and Rakan, but they aren't quite as consistent as those already mentioned. Both of these champions are a lot more situational and honestly take a bit more practice too, but if you do get these champions in the right lanes alongside the right champions, they can be absolutely brutal. Rel and Samira in the bot lane is one combo you won't want to miss out on. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of our rundown of the most OP champions that you should play this preseason for every single role. Who else do you guys think is absolutely broken this patch and why? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget everyone to check out our huge new update to our in-game companion app and see all the amazing changes we've made to make your experience and your ranked climb even better. Click the link below to get started and don't forget to join our Discord too to share your feedback. Thanks everybody for watching and we'll see you all in the next one. Take care.